field and a true problem-solving guru. Agnes, I already had the pleasure speaking to you about your work in Singapore, and so I'm more than happy to welcome you here tonight and share your experiences with our audience. Are you back in France or are you in Singapore?
No, sorry.
Okay, 1 second. There's unfortunately an issue with the audio. Let's see if we can disconnect and reconnect. I think I understood she's in Singapore, so there might be some connection issues. Let's see. Yes, please try to rejoin Agnes so that we can try out if we have a better connection there. Yes, so Singapore is rated as one of the most sustainable cities in Asia and the fourth in the world. I'm looking forward to hear more about that. So according to the 2018 Sustainable City Index, very interesting, but for Singapore sustainability, yes, you're back.
Hello. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can hear you.
Brilliant.
I just started to introduce a little bit your background and the current situation in Singapore. So please, I leave the floor to you now, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about you.
Thanks very much, Alex. And hello to the audience. For those of you who are in France, I am normally based in Paris, France, but right now I'm back home visiting my family for the first time in 2 years. So it's been very bittersweet. And I am very well aware that I'm the only one standing between you and apéro time. So I will try to make this hopefully quite interactive. Welcome any questions. And basically today, I'm going to be talking about this topic, which is quite dear to me. It's called sorry, could you see this?
We can't see your presentation. Yes, now we can see your presentation.
Okay, all right. So this is the topic that I chose when survival meets sustainability, systems designed for maximum impact. I chose this topic because I know that we've been talking a lot about how to capture and measure impact, whereas I want to flip it around a little bit and talk about how do we create a holistic impact in sustainability. And thank you for introducing me just now, Alex. And my career, as Alex mentioned, for 20 years in the public sector has been around multiple very diverse portfolios, all the way from defense to land transport, social welfare, community, and manpower labor policies, as well as public sector innovation. So I've been able to see glimpses of certain problems from very, very different angles. And my key message to the audience is simply this, that achieving sustainability is not a linear game. It is a complex problem of which there are multiple connecting parts. No one person holds all the parts. And as such, there can be no beautiful solution, only compromises. And that different actors will have to want to meet in the middle, join hands across the table, and be prepared to give and take. And this is what I term systems design. But first, a little bit about Singapore. For those of you who may not know Singapore so well, it is a tiny island city-state in Southeast Asia, and we measure a mere 742 square kilometers. So this chart shows you that you can fit 888 Singapores into the size of France. We are a population of 5.8 million, and so that makes us a very dense city. And being an island city, we are 100% of our population lives in an urban environment. So we are three things. We're a country, we're an island, and we're a city all at once. Economically, Singapore is home to the second busiest port in the world, and an air hub where 66 million passengers pass through our airports. or rather used to pass through. We're hoping to get that back up again. And manufacturing still comprises about 20% of Singapore's GDP, which is rather high for a country of very little land. And yet, amongst all of this bustle, Singapore is ranked as a most sustainable Asian city in 2018 by the Sustainable Cities Index, and Asia's most livable city by Mrs. Quality of Life in 2018. So, how do we do it? There are many stories that I can tell you, but the one particular story that I feel best fits my idea of a systems design is that about water sustainability. So, as you know, we have a huge global crisis with water today. About 2.1 billion people do not have access to drinking water. And yet, the global consumption is going to increase by 30% from now to 2050. And our water sources are under all forms of threat. So, when Singapore became independent in 1965, we were almost entirely reliant on our neighbor Malaysia for drinking water. So, we have no natural drinking water of our own. I'm sorry, I think my AirPods went off. Can you still hear me?
We can still hear you, yes, but
Okay.
I'm not sure. Did you put your screen on pause for reason? Because we can't see a presentation.
Now.
Okay, and I think it would be better if you left your AirPods in, because now we can't see you. No. I think you should try to use your AirPods. Okay, I can write it in the chat, but she can't understand what I'm saying.
No, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you very well.
Great. Sorry for that. It's a little,
Don't worry.
a little hiccup. Okay.
Don't worry, it's not an issue.
I stopped the presentation to just come back on screen and talk to you. So you'll see me do that.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, don't panic. So where was I? Yes, I was talking about water, right? And about how when Singapore was independent in 1965, we were entirely reliant on our neighbor, Malaysia, for water resources. So we have no drinking water of our own, no lakes, no snow, of course, we are a tropical country, no ice, and we're surrounded by the sea. So water became an issue of survival for us. And today, just to give you an indication, Singapore consumes about 782 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of water in one day. So water sustainability is really key to us. And to be self-sufficient in water, we deploy these 3 strategies, right? And I'll walk you through what do they really mean. First, let's talk about collect every drop. I want to show you this, which is Marina Bay, an iconic skyline of Singapore. And this appears in all our tourism brochures, all the postcards and in magazines. But what you may not know is that the body of water that you see over there is also a reservoir. It's one of the 17 reservoirs in Singapore. So collect every drop, which is our first strategy, means that every drop of rain that falls in Singapore is channeled into a reservoir network. And in fact, the drainage system also acts as a huge underground network of reservoirs. What you see over here as Marina Bay Sands was actually 30 years in the making, all the way from urban planning to completion, which includes reclaiming land from the sea and damming up the river mouth of Singapore River from the sea so that we can create a freshwater container that is, in effect, the whole island. So collect every drop was a feat in long-term urban planning. But the next part is about technology and water industry. So 30% of drinking water is from desalination, which uses actually a lot of energy. So it's not great in terms of carbon emissions. But nevertheless, we're carefully watching the advances in technology to see if we can bring down the energy consumption. But this is actually our secret power in water sustainability. New water is recycled water. So sewage water is first treated and then purified using really high-level advanced membrane technology as well as UV technology. And the result is recycled water that's actually even cleaner than tap water. Today, 40% of our drinking water is new water, which we aim to increase to 55% by 2060. So Singapore developed this technology, it's proprietary, and we have since exported it globally, creating good jobs in a water management industry. So I'm sharing this with you to show that sustainability is a long game. Remember how our vision for Marina Bay took 30 years to actualize. It is also a systems game, one of integration between urban planning, research and development, industry development, as well as citizen engagement. This picture that I'm showing you here is actually what a storm canal in Singapore looks like, right? We have the ABC Waterways program, which stands for Active, Beautiful, Clean, where waterways are intentionally developed to be points of recreation for the community. And this is to develop a relationship between people and water so that we come to treasure this very scarce national resource. But sustainability is also a game of trade-offs. And what I'm showing you now is an old picture of the Singapore River, which leads into Marina Bay. And in the early days of Singapore, the Singapore River was a thoroughfare for bumboats to ply their trades and to bring in supplies to the merchants all along the river. It was polluted, it was dirty. You might imagine in the 1970s, all the bumboats were fitted with diesel engines. There was trash everywhere. It was definitely not somewhere where you want your drinking water to come from. But every single one of these businesses that you see lining the river had to be displaced and relocated in our quest for water sustainability. So behind every glossy, picture-perfect postcard that you see is actually someone's sacrifice. And it represents an army of civil servants going down to the ground, going from business to business, trying to address their anger, trying to find them suitable places for relocating their businesses. For some businesses, like the bumboat drivers, there's just no relocation. So it's about helping them find safety nets. And so what the speaker before said in terms of going down to the ground and understanding what's the impact that you're actually having on people, that really resonated with me. Because in the public service, we deal with that kind of unseen impact every single day. So in the early days of our independence, we needed to make such sacrifices because Singapore's survival was at stake. And this is just on one issue, which is water. There were many, many other issues that we were fighting simultaneous fires on. But our survival, once again, is at stake with climate change. And being a low-lying island state, we're very, very susceptible to rising sea levels. So as such, Singapore is a signatory to the Paris Agreement, and we aim to peak our emissions at about 65 million tons of CO2 by 2030, and subsequently halve it to 33 million tons by 2050. So to do that, we had launched a green plan called SG Green Plan 2030 that represents our whole nation efforts and agenda on sustainable development. So under the green plan, there are 5 prongs, and I won't show you all the prongs, but I'll just sort of quickly talk through what they are. So that's a green plan. So prong number 1, city in nature. We aim to plant about 1 million more trees and setting aside 50% more land, equivalent to about 200 hectares for nature parks. And this is in addition to currently our existing 300 parks and 4 nature reserves, altogether in a land size that is smaller than metropolitan New York. We are going to deploy solar energy 5 times more than today and aim to have 80% of our buildings greened by 2030 and to deploy electric vehicles around the island fully by 2040. We are also going to help companies embrace opportunities in the green economy. putting together technology, marketing, and all forms of support for small, medium enterprises to help them transit. One of our prongs is also food resilience. We have a 30 by 30 plan where we target 30% of our locally consumed foods to be locally grown by 2030. Today, that figure is about less than 9%. So we're also heavily investing into agri-tech, for example. Finally, we're going to increase the public transport usage from currently today 64% to 75% of ridership by 2030, and also turn incinerated waste into construction material. So previously we had new water, now we have new sand, and we're really trying to create a circular economy really all across the board. So it sounds good, right? Plans sound good. But it actually belies a lot of trade-offs. And it's the kind of trade-offs I'd like to talk about now. So for example, let's talk about workforce skills for one thing, right? In the chemicals and oil and gas industry, definitely a brown industry by any means, they hire about 40,000 people in good jobs like engineers and technicians. So even if we get excited about the opportunities in the green economy, for example, the fact is that many technologies and green industries are still at a nascent stage of development and not yet at the level where enough jobs can be created to absorb displaced workers. And you also can't just simply kill off the chemicals industry. It actually produces components used in solar panels, for example. So there's definitely a lot of trade-offs involved here. Even within sustainability goals, as we're very well aware, there are trade-offs. We don't have much land, so we're thinking that maybe solar panels will go on our water bodies. But nature groups are concerned, and rightfully so, about affecting the animal species in these water bodies and hence biodiversity. The same goes for our goal to increase public transport ridership. That means building more metro lines. And for a land-scarce Singapore, it means digging deep and even deeper for underground metro lines. And that affects also those that have environmental impact. So this goes back to my key message, which is achieving sustainability is not a linear game. And it doesn't mean that because we can track or measure CO2 emissions that all will be well. And I'm saying this to you because I know maybe several of the audiences out there are from nonprofits or green tech startups. And perhaps you have tried to engage governments or municipalities or regional councils with great ideas. You have the technology and you're really raring to go. And then you meet with a lot of resistance. I know it can be very demoralizing. Or maybe you're even working in the government itself and you have a passion for the green agenda, but you're just simply not finding traction. My point to you is that let's not all be reducing sustainability down to just one thing, right? The siren call of CO2 reduction. I think it's great. It's definitely important and it's a really, really important start. But in order to get to that goal, there are many other things along the way that we need to think about. We need to think about the social impact on the displaced workers. We need to think about where we're going to develop new skills for the green economy. We need to think about land space and urban planning trade-offs. So complex systems change, of which we're at an inflection point today, is going to be a hard slog. And I'm not saying this I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I'm the last speaker and everyone just goes, "Whoa, this is terrible. We're so depressed right now." But actually, if anything, I mean to bring you hope. And why am I saying that? I think the fact that complex systems change is so difficult means that it cannot and should not solely lie in the purview of governments. Everyone, the public sector, the startup community, the educational institutions need to be thinking about trade-offs on behalf of everybody else, on behalf of each other. Then only then can we start to have really empathetic multi-stakeholder conversations at the same table and then steel ourselves to make the change as a society, where we can see that everybody has to sacrifice a little bit on behalf of humanity. And the conversation cannot be about, this is my ground, this is my stake, and one party wins and the other loses. So if I were you, I'll start talking to many different people who would bring me different perspectives across the board. If I were a technology company, for example, I would partner vocational training institutions to run adult training programs to transition workers from brown industries to green sectors and train them in my technology and do that at scale and across a long runway, right? I'll talk to urban planners to understand who are the other constituents that they're grappling with and offer, can I go meet them with you so that we can talk as a same voice? So in short, sustainability is a systems game, and it requires, firstly, really strong intra-governmental coordination between different agencies, and then governments need to work really closely with the private sector and civic society to manage the pace and the pains of transition, because it will be painful. So in short, there can be no beautiful solution, but only the best compromise, and it requires all of us to come together. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that unusual but very, very insightful presentation. Yeah, we are back to the topic of collaboration. I think collaboration here is key, and interconnection, communication between the stakeholders. Thank you very much for that. And we also have already some questions that I want to ask you. So as you mentioned during your presentation, driving sustainability is a leadership endeavor. So what do you mean by that, and how can this galvanize people?
Yeah, so remember, for example, I talked about the Singapore Green Plan. That represents the work of maybe over 18 months to 24 months of different agencies coming together, at least 5 different ministries, and the top leaders as well as the politicians sitting at the table and having really difficult conversations with each other, noticing and recognizing what are the trade-offs and coming to an agreement. That for me is a leadership endeavor. The ability to have difficult but honest conversations and the willingness to see things from each other's point of view. And I can think of, and there will be leaderships at so many different levels. We tend to think of it at the political level or at the permanent secretary level or at the PDG, the CEO. But every one of us in a form should be displaying leadership whenever we can. For me, the kind of leadership that's needed now most is a facilitative one, where you are essentially exercising 3 muscles, that of appreciative inquiry, just really trying to see things from and walk in the shoes of another person, in the life of another person, just for one day. The second is about designing great conversations. How do you bring really different, in fact, conflicting perspectives to the table, but have people either agree to disagree or agree to come back another day to further talk about it, and to have the stomach and the perseverance to do that. That is a facilitative leadership, and actually something that if you're in middle management, or if you are running, if you're a program officer or you're a program lead, that is so much power that you have, because you are essentially running these workshops. So agenda setting is, for me, a form of leadership that's going to be super important now.
Yeah, leadership and facilitation, as you just said, because I think it's important. People know that there will be trade-offs, and they also know that we all will have to make sacrifices. But of course, it's human. I think that the people also want to see another person doing the trade-offs instead of yourself. So I think their facilitation, communication is key, and to make people understand, okay, everybody has to collaborate. Everybody is part of this world and part of the system and needs to participate equally. So this is...
Yeah, absolutely. And, we think of leadership as that lone hero trying to shift, doing something really brave, doing something really big. In sustainability, it can't be that. It needs to be all of us.
Definitely. I think leadership here is more setting an example and helping others to participate at the same level. So it's not hierarchical, it's more, taking each other's hands and walking towards an objective we need to face, because we can't do any otherwise. That's possibly something we have, what the most important part we learned from this presentation. And yeah, please.
No, I was waiting for your next question.
I wanted to ask another question. How would you suggest can people look beyond their own impact and tackle a more holistic impact measurement? How can we include all stakeholders without detracting from impact or minimize the change caused by lack of interest within the value chain?
Yeah, no, this is a really good one. I'll tell you this story. When I'm a career civil servant, but I spent 1 year learning to be a designer um, in a huge design firm in San Francisco. And one day, one of the designers said to me, Agnes, this is such a great idea, but I don't know why the client can't implement it. But actually, to me, I was expecting the client not to implement it. And because already I could see the complexities in the operations, I could see the multiple stakeholders that they had to deal with, then an idea is not just a simple idea to be implemented. I think that question is about how do you stay true to your goals, yet manage your stakeholder ecosystem without trying to water down things. To be honest, I'm not sure it's possible. In my experience in the public sector, we are dealing with massive systems. Something's got to give. Something's got to give. And no, you can't make everyone happy. So what do we do in that case? How do we know what's going to give? We do a couple of things. We do futures thinking and scenario planning, where you're really asking yourself, well, right now I'm trying to hedge against uncertainties in the future, right? So how do I best hedge against it if there are so many different stakeholder perspectives? So in the Singapore government, from the 1990s onwards, actually, scenario planning has been a big tool in our policy planning arsenal. Today, we do design thinking as well. Yes, we do quite a lot of that in order to test our assumptions where we think that, oh, this is what citizens want, or oh, this is going to be good for society. Is that really true? So over and over again, what we're essentially trying to do is to question our assumptions, trying to uncover our biases, and trying to say, well, the future is uncertain, but what are some of these undeniable drivers, and how do we look out for signposts along the way? I don't know if that answered the question.
It definitely does. It was a very elaborated question, answer to my question, and I think it gave me an insight how you work and how you, tackle problems you're facing. And I'm sure this will also help you working in France on several projects to have an insight on these things from the Singaporean perspective as well. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I just think that the sitting in between two worlds, looking at what's happening in Europe and France and coming from Asia, it's super interesting. I would say that there's a lot that other countries in terms of regulations can learn from Europe. What I see in Europe is that it's a much more vibrant startup scene in sustainability, in technology, in services, and well, because Europe is basically the single largest compliance market, and that regulation creates the environment for services and technology to thrive. And I hope that one day in Asia we'll get there as well. So right now there's there's no compulsory carbon credits. Singapore, for example, the carbon taxes is ridiculously low. It's US $5 per ton. It's and
Wow.
I think there's no doubt that it needs to be raised over time, right? There's no doubt. It's just a matter of when and how fast. And again, it comes back to the trade-offs that I was talking about. And at the same time, we're also starting to see the starts of green tech in sustainability space. It's exciting. especially in agri-foods. If you think about Singapore with no land whatsoever, how are we going to be an agriculture economy? It's going to be, our farmers are going to be scientists with iPads. That's how it's going to be done. And so there's about 108 or 90 hectare squares set aside for agri-tech and food hub in Singapore in the north. So there's the start of all of this growing, but it will take time. And the key thing is skills, right? We can put in all these beautiful buildings and technology, but will the skills be there? So that remains to be seen, I think, Alex.
Thank you. Yeah, I see your point also, because if there is a need, there will be a solution. But as long as there are other ways we can go, it's difficult to really accelerate what we should need to do. As you just mentioned, the problems you are facing in Singapore, they put you under certain pressure to accelerate very fast in certain points. So we will see how the future will evolve around that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you also for exceptional presentation and the interaction we had. It was very, very nice. And I hope you stay for the networking session as well, so that our attendees can follow up on that.
Oh, that's
you gave
too
us
kind.
quite good insight. I'm looking forward to that. I want to catch up as well if possible.
I will try to stay
As
for a
you're-
while, but unfortunately it's nearing midnight for me due to the time difference. So I can't stay
Yes,
too long.
of course. No, just if you can stay a couple of minutes longer to do the networking session, and then
Yes.
we let you go to bed. It's very late, you're right.
I'd love to.
Okay. It was lovely to talk to you. Thank you very
And
much.
you too. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Well, we have reached the end of today's lineup, so please don't leave us yet. I would recommend you to visit the networking area that you can find on the left side of your screen and get in touch with other attendees or our fabulous speakers. I would also like to thank the whole team of SmartBee and the speakers, who did an amazing job, absolutely great, and also the audience for all your questions and engagement during the session. Have a good evening, stay curious, be the change you want to see, and don't forget to follow up with SmartBee. Thank you very much.